After saying goodbye to my grandson as he lay in a coma, I left the hospital in despair. But when I reached the parking lot, I stopped dead in my tracks. My grandson stepped out of a luxury car as if nothing had happened. And before I could even call his name, I saw who was driving. And that was the most unsettling part. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I will never forget the weight of that hospital room door as it closed behind me. The antiseptic smell clung to my clothes, my skin, my very soul. For 3 weeks, I had watched my grandson Michael lie motionless in that bed, tubes snaking from his body like the roots of a dying tree. The doctors spoke in careful, measured tones about brain activity and recovery odds, but I knew what they really meant. At 67 years old, I had learned to hear the words people didn't say. "You should go home, Mrs. Foster," the nurse had told me gently that afternoon. "Get some rest. We'll call if there's any change." Any change. As if hope could be packaged in such sterile language. I nodded, gathering my purse and the sweater I'd knitted during those endless bedside vigils. My fingers traced the pattern one last time. Cables and knots, just like the complications that had brought us here. Michael, 23 years old, struck by a hit-and-run driver while crossing the street near his apartment. No witnesses, no leads, just my grandson, suspended between this world and whatever comes next. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. I studied my reflection in the polished steel doors. Gray hair pulled back in a practical bun, lines etched deep around my eyes from years of Kansas sun and harder years of grief. I looked like what I was, a woman who had buried too much. My husband George, gone 5 years now. My daughter Joan, lost 23 years ago in childbirth, taking with her the twin brother Michael never knew he had, or so I had been told. The parking garage was dim and nearly empty at this hour. My sensible sedan waited in its usual spot, 3rd row from the entrance. I fumbled with my keys, vision blurred by tears I had been holding back all day. The grief counselor at the hospital had suggested I allow myself to cry, to process the trauma, but I came from farming stock. We processed wheat and corn, not emotions. We endured. I was wiping my eyes with a tissue when I heard the car door slam. The sound echoed through the concrete structure, sharp and final. I looked up reflexively, and my heart stopped. A young man had just stepped out of a black Mercedes sedan, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive suit that caught the light as he moved. He was laughing at something, tossing his head back with an ease that spoke of health and vitality and everything my Michael no longer had. But that wasn't what froze me in place. The young man was Michael. Same sharp jawline, same dark hair with that slight widow's peak, same way of standing with his weight on his left leg, the right slightly bent. I had memorized every detail of my grandson's face during those 3 weeks of watching him sleep a sleep that might never end. And now he was here, walking and laughing and impossibly, devastatingly alive. "Michael?" The word escaped my lips as barely a whisper. The young man didn't hear me. He was turning back toward the Mercedes, still smiling. I took a step forward, then another. My mind scrambled for explanations. Had they made a mistake upstairs? Had Michael woken up, gotten dressed, somehow made it down here while I was in the elevator? But no. He was in ICU, in a coma, monitored every second. There were machines tracking his every breath. I was about to call out again when the driver's side door opened. A woman emerged, and the tissue fell from my hand. She was in her late 50s, elegant in a navy blazer and pearls. Her hair was perfectly styled, dark with strategic highlights. She moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority, to being obeyed. She walked around the car to join the young man, placing a hand on his arm with casual possession. I knew that face. God help me. I knew that face. Dr. Marlene Vance, the obstetrician who had delivered Michael, who had held my hand when Joan started hemorrhaging, who had looked me in the eye, voice breaking with apparent grief, and told me that my daughter was gone, that both babies, twins, she had said, we didn't know there were twins until the delivery, hadn't survived. One stillborn, she explained, and Michael fighting for every breath but alive, miraculously alive. 23 years ago, in the same hospital where my grandson now lay dying, I pressed myself against my car, suddenly desperate not to be seen. My legs trembled. The parking garage tilted around me. Dr. Vance was saying something to the young man, to Michael, to the boy who was Michael but couldn't be Michael, and he was nodding, checking his phone, still smiling that easy smile. They looked comfortable together, familiar, like family. The doctor glanced toward the hospital entrance, her expression shifting to something harder, more calculating. She spoke again, and this time I caught fragments. Careful. Timing is crucial. She can't know. She. Who was she? The young man. I couldn't think of him as anything else, couldn't name what he might be. Followed her gaze toward the hospital. For just a moment, his expression changed too. The easy smile fell away, replaced by something cold, something that reminded me of winter mornings on the farm, when you'd find small animals frozen in the fields, their lives stolen by the quiet killer of deep cold. Then the smile snapped back into place like a mask. They got back into the Mercedes. The engine purred to life, expensive and smooth. I watched the taillights disappear up the ramp, heading toward the exit. My purse had fallen to the ground. Inside, my phone was ringing. Probably my son Ralph, calling to check on me like he did every evening. Dependable Ralph, who visited Michael dutifully once a week but always left after exactly 30 minutes, as if grief were something that could be scheduled. Ralph, whose wife Sharon had suggested just yesterday that maybe it was time to think about arrangements, her voice carefully modulated, her eyes on the cost of ICU care. I let it ring. My hands were shaking too hard to answer. Instead, I bent and retrieved my purse, then walked on unsteady legs to the hospital entrance. The evening receptionist looked up with a practiced smile. "Did you forget something, Mrs. Foster?" "I need to see the records department," I heard myself say. "Patient records. From 23 years ago." The smile flickered. "I'm sorry, but records that old would be in archives. You'd need to submit a formal request, and there's quite a backlog. It's about my daughter, Joan Foster. She died here during childbirth in 2002. Something in my voice must have registered because the receptionist's expression softened. "Let me call up to administration. Maybe someone can help you." While she made the call, I stood in that sterile lobby and felt the world I knew. The world where my daughter had died tragically but naturally, where Michael was my only grandson, where doctors could be trusted to tell the truth, crack open like an egg, revealing something dark and writhing inside. Dr. Marlene Vance had certified my daughter's death, had told me, with tears in her own eyes, that Joan had hemorrhaged and there was nothing anyone could do, had placed a single living baby in my arms and said, "This is Michael. He's all you have left of her now." But if Michael was all I had left, then who was the young man in the parking garage? The one who looked exactly like him, down to the slight crook in his smile. The one who moved through the world with the ease of someone who had never spent 3 weeks in a coma, never been the victim of a hit and run that the police couldn't solve. The receptionist hung up and looked at me with pity. "Mrs. Foster, I'm sorry. Archives close at 5, and it's after 6 now. But if you come back tomorrow morning—" "Thank you," I managed. "Tomorrow morning." Yes. I walked back to my car like a woman in a dream, or a nightmare. I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine, watching the other cars come and go, each one potentially hiding secrets I had never imagined. In my purse, my phone buzzed with a text from Ralph. "Mom, you're not answering. Everything okay? Sharon wants to know if you're coming for dinner Sunday. We need to talk about Michael's situation." Michael's situation. As if my grandson's life hung by a thread that could be discussed over pot roast and small talk. I typed back, "Fine. Tomorrow. Busy now." Then I opened my photo album app and scrolled back through the years of pictures. Michael as a baby, laughing in a high chair. Michael at 5, gap-toothed and muddy from playing in the farm creek. Michael at graduation, proud in his cap and gown. Michael at his college apartment, the last picture I had taken before the accident. I studied each photograph with new eyes. Looking for what? A sign that there had been another baby? Another child who should have grown up alongside him, should have shared these moments? The hospital records would tell me the truth, or at least they would tell me what the official story had been 23 years ago. But I had seen Dr. Marlene Vance tonight, alive and well and conspiring with a young man who wore my grandson's face. And I had heard her words, "She can't know." Someone couldn't know something, and I had a terrible, creeping certainty about who that someone was. It was 9 o'clock when I finally started the car and drove home to the farmhouse where I had raised Joan, where George and I had planned to grow old together, where I had brought baby Michael home from the hospital and promised his dead mother I would keep him safe. The house was dark and quiet. Too quiet. I turned on every light, suddenly afraid of shadows. On my answering machine, 4 messages, 3 from Ralph, 1 from Sharon, her voice honey-sweet. "Mom, we really do need to discuss Michael's care. The doctors say there's been no improvement. We have to be realistic. Call me." Realistic. Another word for giving up. I deleted the message and went to the spare bedroom, the one that had been Joan's, that I had kept almost exactly as she left it. Band posters on the walls, books on the shelves, and in the closet, storage boxes I hadn't opened in years. I pulled down the one labeled Joan, Hospital. Inside, sympathy cards, the program from her memorial service, photographs from her pregnancy. She had been so happy, so ready to be a mother, and underneath it all, the manila envelope the hospital had given me with her discharge papers and death certificate. I spread the documents on Joan's old desk, my reading glasses perched on my nose, and I began to read every word, looking for the lie I had somehow missed 23 years ago. The death certificate was signed by Dr. Marlene Vance. Cause of death, postpartum hemorrhage. Time of death, 11:47 p.m., March 15, 2002. Below it, another certificate. This one for an unnamed male infant. Cause of death, stillborn. No time given, because the dead don't get times, only the living do. Also signed by Dr. Marlene Vance. I turned over the envelope and found something I had forgotten. A handwritten note from the doctor herself. "Dear Mrs. Foster, there are no words for the tragedy you have endured. Please know that everything possible was done. Your grandson Michael is a fighter. He will need your strength. I will personally ensure he receives the best care. Call my office if you need anything. You are not alone. Dr. Vance." At the time, I had found the note comforting. Proof that someone cared. Now, I saw it differently. A promise to ensure Michael received care. From the doctor who had just gotten into a Mercedes with his identical twin. A twin who was supposed to be dead. My phone rang again. Ralph. I ignored it. Instead, I sat in my daughter's childhood room and understood with chilling clarity that I had been lied to 23 years ago. That somewhere, somehow, my grandson's twin brother had survived, had been taken, had been raised by someone else, perhaps by Dr. Vance herself. And now, with Michael in a coma, that other grandson, my other grandson, had appeared in a hospital parking garage, whole and healthy and laughing, while the boy I had raised lay upstairs fighting for a life someone might have already tried to steal from him once before. The hit and run. No witnesses, no leads. What if it hadn't been an accident at all? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that young man's face, Michael's face, turning toward the hospital with that cold, calculated expression. By dawn, I had drunk 4 cups of coffee and made a list of everything I needed to do, my hand cramping as I wrote. First, get Joan's hospital records. All of them. Second, find out everything about Dr. Marlene Vance. Third, do it all without alerting anyone, especially Ralph and Sharon. The last point was crucial. My son had been distant since his father's death, but in the past year, he'd become almost hostile whenever I made decisions without consulting him. "You're getting older, Mom," he'd say, his voice careful. "We just want to make sure you're thinking clearly." As if grief and age had somehow erased my ability to reason. Sharon was worse. She smiled with her mouth but not her eyes, and every conversation circled back to the farm, specifically what I planned to do with it. "It's so much work for one person," she'd coo. "Have you thought about selling? Ralph and I could help you find a nice condo in town. I knew what she really meant. Sign over the land, move into assisted living, become convenient. At 8 o'clock, I dressed in my most respectable outfit. Navy dress, pearl earrings George had given me on our 30th anniversary, and drove back to St. Catherine's Hospital. The morning receptionist was different from last night's, younger and less sympathetic. "Archives don't open until 9, she said, barely looking up from her computer. "You can wait in the lobby." I waited, watching doctors and nurses flow past in their scrubs, visitors clutching flowers and coffee cups. Somewhere in this building, Michael lay unconscious. I wanted to go up to him, to sit beside his bed and apologize for not protecting him better. But first, I needed answers. At 9:05, a tired-looking woman emerged from an elevator and introduced herself as Paula Green, the archives supervisor. She led me through a maze of corridors to a basement office that smelled of old paper and industrial cleaner. "You said this was about your daughter." Paula settled behind her desk, fingers poised over her keyboard. "Joan Foster. She died here in March 2002 during childbirth. I need to see all her medical records, the delivery, everything." Paula's fingers flew across the keys. She frowned. 2002 would be in deep storage. It'll take some time to pull the files. "Can I ask why you need them now?" I had prepared for this question. "My grandson, Joan's son, is currently in ICU. The doctors are asking about family medical history, genetic conditions. I need to give them complete information." It wasn't entirely a lie. Michael was in ICU, and I did need information. Paula's expression softened. "I'm so sorry. Let me see what I can do." More typing. Then her frown deepened. "That's odd." My pulse quickened. "What's odd?" "The file's been accessed recently. 3 weeks ago, actually. Usually records that old just sit untouched. But someone requested these specifically." She looked up at me. "You're listed as next of kin. Did you request them?" "No. 3 weeks ago. Right around the time of Michael's accident." "Who accessed them?" "I can't tell you that. Privacy regulations, but—" She hesitated. "The request came from within the hospital. Medical staff override. A doctor. Or someone claiming to be one." "How long will it take to pull the physical files?" I asked. 2, maybe 3 days. "I'll need you to fill out request forms, sign releases. Can I make it a priority? Please. My grandson may not have 3 days." Paula studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll do what I can. Give me until tomorrow afternoon." I filled out the paperwork with shaking hands and left the archives feeling both hopeful and terrified. Someone had accessed Joan's records 3 weeks ago. Someone who knew I might come looking. Back in my car, I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled Dr. Marlene Vance. Her medical practice had closed 5 years ago, according to the sparse information I found. "Retired," the listing said. No forwarding address, no other details. But there was a photo from a hospital fundraiser in 2018. Dr. Vance in an evening gown, smiling beside a tall man identified as prominent businessman Leonard Ashworth. I zoomed in on the photo. Behind Dr. Vance, partially visible, was a younger man. Even in the grainy image, I could see the resemblance to Michael. The same sharp features, the same build. My hands trembled on the phone. I screenshotted the image and kept searching. Leonard Ashworth owned Ashworth Pharmaceuticals, a mid-sized company based in Kansas City. Married twice, divorced twice. No children listed. Net worth estimated in the tens of millions. No children listed. But perhaps one raised in secret, passed off as an adopted nephew or ward. I was so focused on my phone that I didn't notice the car pulling up beside mine until someone knocked on my window. I jumped, nearly dropping the phone. A police officer stood there, young and serious. I rolled down the window. "Yes, officer?" "Ma'am, you've been sitting in this parking space for over 30 minutes. Are you all right? Is there a problem?" Behind him, a security guard hovered near the parking garage entrance. They'd been watching me. "I'm fine," I managed. "Just checking some messages before I drive." "Is that illegal?" "No, ma'am. But the hospital has asked us to monitor for suspicious activity. There was an incident last week. Someone trying to access restricted areas. Someone trying to access restricted areas? Or someone trying to prevent others from asking questions? I was just visiting my grandson, I said, keeping my voice steady. In ICU, I'm not suspicious. The officer's expression softened slightly. I understand, but maybe you should head home now? Get some rest? It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order, however politely phrased. I started my car and drove away, watching the officer in my rearview mirror. He wrote something in a notebook before returning to his patrol car. They were watching me now. Whoever they were. I took a circuitous route home, checking behind me constantly for following vehicles. When I finally pulled into my driveway, I sat for a moment studying the farmhouse. Everything looked normal. The wraparound porch, the flower boxes I'd planted in spring, the old oak tree where Joan had hung a tire swing. But normal was an illusion. I knew that now. Inside, the message light on my answering machine blinked urgently. 8 new messages. I pressed play while making more coffee. Ralph's voice, strained. Mom, where are you? You're not answering your cell. Call me back immediately. Sharon's voice, honey turning to vinegar. We drove by the house this morning. You weren't there. We're concerned about you wandering around at your age. Call us. Ralph again. Mom, the hospital said you were there twice yesterday and again this morning. What's going on? Are you okay? 3 more from Ralph, each more agitated. Then Sharon again. We're coming over tonight, 6 o'clock. We need to talk about Michael's situation and about your behavior lately. Please be home. The final message made my blood run cold. A woman's voice, smooth and cultured. Dr. Marlene Vance. Mrs. Foster, this is Dr. Vance. I know it's been many years since we spoke. I heard about Michael's accident. Such a tragedy. I wanted to reach out, see how you're holding up. Perhaps we could meet for coffee. I have some information about Joan that might bring you comfort. Call me at this number. She left a phone number, then added, Please don't mention this to anyone else. Some things are better discussed privately, between 2 people who understand loss. The message ended. I stood frozen in my kitchen. Coffee forgotten. Dr. Vance knew I had been asking questions. She was reaching out, trying to control the narrative, and she was warning me to keep quiet. I replayed the message, writing down the phone number with shaking hands. Then I deleted it, though I was certain Sharon would check my machine the moment she arrived. She always did, under the guise of helping. I had until 6 o'clock. 7 hours to find something, anything, that would prove I wasn't losing my mind. I went back to Joan's room and searched more thoroughly this time. Behind her yearbooks I found her pregnancy journal, something I'd been too grief-stricken to read 23 years ago. I sat on her bed and opened it to the first page. January 10th, 2002. Found out today I'm pregnant. I'm scared and excited and terrified. But I know this baby is meant to be. I can feel it. I flipped through weeks of entries. Joan documenting her growing belly, her cravings, her fears about being a single mother. The father, a college boyfriend, had left the moment she told him. She'd been alone but determined. Then, in February 18th, 2002. The ultrasound was today. Mom came with me. Dr. Vance says everything looks perfect. But something weird happened. After the main exam, Dr. Vance asked if she could do additional measurements and sent Mom out of the room. She was gone for almost 20 minutes. When Mom came back, Dr. Vance was acting strange. Too cheerful, almost manic. She kept saying what a special baby this was going to be. It made me uncomfortable. I read the passage 3 times. Dr. Vance had sent me out of the room during Joan's ultrasound. Why? I kept reading, my heart pounding. February 27th, 2002. Another appointment today. Dr. Vance asked about my family medical history, specifically about twins. I told her what I knew. Mom's grandmother had twins, but that was generations ago. Why does she care so much? March 1st, 2002. I keep feeling like someone's watching me. Probably just pregnancy paranoia. But twice this week I've seen the same black car parked outside my apartment. Dr. Vance called again to check in. She's so attentive it's almost creepy. The entries stopped on March 10th, 5 days before Joan died. Or 5 days before they told me she died. I closed the journal, mind racing. Dr. Vance had known about the twins. She had sent me out during that crucial ultrasound. She had been watching Joan. And then Joan had died, one baby was declared stillborn, and I had been handed a single surviving grandson while Dr. Vance assured me she would personally ensure he received the best care. My cell phone rang. Ralph. I answered this time. Hello. Mom, finally. Where have you been? I had errands. At the hospital? They said you were bothering the archive staff, demanding medical records. They told you that? My voice sharpened. Why are you checking up on me? A pause. When Ralph spoke again, his tone had shifted to that careful, therapeutic cadence. Sharon and I are worried. You've been under tremendous stress. It's understandable that grief might make you confused. I'm not confused. Mom, you're 67 years old. You've been living alone on that farm, dealing with Michael's situation. Maybe it's time to accept some help. Let us help you. Help. The word people used when they meant control. I don't need help, I said. I need the truth about what happened to Joan. Another pause, longer this time. What are you talking about? Did you know Dr. Vance called me? The doctor from Joan's delivery? Why would she… Ralph stopped. Mom, Joan died 23 years ago. What does any of this have to do with Michael being in a coma now? Everything. I wanted to scream. It has everything to do with Michael. But I caught myself. If I told Ralph what I'd seen in the parking garage, he'd think I was having delusions. Sharon would use it as ammunition to prove I was incompetent. Never mind, I said. I'll see you at 6. Mom? I hung up. For a moment, I sat in Joan's room, surrounded by the remnants of my daughter's short life, and felt the walls closing in, the police watching me, the hospital monitoring my requests, Ralph and Sharon arriving in a few hours to have a talk about my behavior, and somewhere out there, Dr. Marlene Vance and the young man with Michael's face, waiting to see what I would do next. But they had made one mistake. They had assumed that because I was old, I was weak, that because I was grieving, I was blind. I picked up Joan's journal and my car keys. Before Ralph and Sharon arrived, before anyone could stop me, I had one more place to go, the police station, to report a hit and run that I suddenly suspected was no accident at all, and to ask why the investigation into my grandson's near death had gone nowhere in 3 weeks. The Kansas City Police Department's 7th Precinct was housed in a gray concrete building that looked as tired as I felt. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed overhead while officers moved past with the practiced indifference of people who had seen everything twice. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, looked up from his computer. "Can I help you, ma'am? I'm here about the Michael Foster hit-and-run case from 3 weeks ago." His expression shifted slightly. Recognition. "You're the grandmother." "I am, and I have new information. Let me get Detective Morgan. He's handling that case." The sergeant picked up his phone, spoke quietly, then gestured to a row of plastic chairs. "He'll be right out." I sat, clutching Joan's journal and my purse. Around me, the station hummed with activity. Phones ringing, voices raised in the booking area, the smell of old coffee and industrial cleaner. I checked my watch. 2:30. I had 3.5 hours before Ralph and Sharon showed up at my house. Detective Morgan emerged from a back corridor 10 minutes later. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with tired eyes and a coffee stain on his tie. "Mrs. Foster, I'm Detective Jake Morgan. Why don't we talk in here?" He led me to a small interview room that smelled of sweat and anxiety. We sat across from each other at a scarred table. Morgan pulled out a notebook. "The sergeant said you have new information about your grandson's case. I want to know why you haven't found the driver." Morgan's jaw tightened slightly. "Ma'am, I understand your frustration, but hit-and-runs are difficult cases. No witnesses came forward. No cameras caught the incident. What about his phone records? His computer? Did you check who he'd been in contact with before the accident?" A pause. Morgan's expression became guarded. "Why would we need to check that? The case is being investigated as a traffic accident. What if it wasn't an accident?" Morgan leaned back in his chair, and I saw it. The same look Ralph had given me on the phone. Concern mixed with pity. "Mrs. Foster, I know this has been incredibly hard on you, but there's no evidence suggesting your grandson was deliberately targeted. Did you even look for evidence? Of course because I think someone tried to kill Michael, and I think that someone has connections that made this investigation go away. Morgan set down his pen carefully. Too carefully. That's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof? I hesitated. If I told him about seeing Michael's twin in the parking garage, about Dr. Vance, about the pregnancy journal, he'd dismiss me as a grief-stricken old woman with a conspiracy theory. I want to see the case file, I said instead. Everything you have on Michael's accident. I'm sorry, but I can't share active investigation materials with... Then tell me this. Did anyone else request information about this case? Anyone from St. Catherine's Hospital? Morgan's expression flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. Who asked about it? I pressed. Was it Dr. Marlene Vance? Ma'am, I really can't discuss... She called me this morning. Left a message saying she wanted to meet, to discuss Joan, my daughter who died 23 years ago. Why would a retired obstetrician suddenly contact me the same day I start asking questions about my grandson's medical records? Morgan was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mrs. Foster, I'm going to be straight with you. Someone did make inquiries about your grandson's case. I can't tell you who, but I was advised to be cautious about pursuing certain angles. Advised by whom? I can't say. Can't or won't. He met my eyes. Both. We stared at each other across that scarred table. I saw something in his face. Frustration. Maybe even anger. A cop who knew something was wrong but had been told to back off. If I found evidence, I said carefully, real evidence that Michael was deliberately hurt, would you look at it? Bring me evidence, and I'll do my job, Morgan said. But Mrs. Foster, be careful. If you're right about someone having the kind of connections that could influence a police investigation, then you're dealing with people who have significant resources. People like that don't appreciate questions. Is that a warning? It's advice from someone who's seen what happens when ordinary people go up against powerful ones. I stood, gathering my purse. Detective Morgan, I'm 67 years old. I've buried my husband and my daughter. My grandson is in a coma, and I just discovered I might have another grandson I was told died at birth. I don't have time to be careful. Morgan stood too. He pulled a business card from his pocket and wrote something on the back. My personal cell. If you find something concrete, call me directly. Not through the station. I took the card. Why are you helping me? Because I have a grandmother too. And because I became a cop to find the truth, not to bury it. Outside, clouds had gathered, threatening rain. I sat in my car and checked my phone. 2 missed calls from Ralph, 1 from Sharon. A text from Ralph. Mom, we're coming early. 4:30. Please be there. They were closing in, trying to control my movements. I had maybe 90 minutes. I pulled out Dr. Vance's number and stared at it. She wanted to meet, to discuss things privately, to manage me, to feed me whatever story would keep me quiet. But what if I went? What if I let her think she was controlling the situation while I gathered information? I dialed before I could second-guess myself. She answered on the first ring. Mrs. Foster, I hoped you'd call. Her voice was exactly as I remembered. Cultured, warm, trustworthy. The voice that had told me my daughter was dead. You said you had information about Joan, I said. I do. And I think you have questions that deserve answers. Can you meet me? Say, 4 o'clock at the Riverside Cafe? It's quiet there, we can talk privately. 4 o'clock, before Ralph and Sharon arrived at my house. I'll be there, I said. Come alone, please. What I need to tell you is sensitive. For your protection as much as mine. The call ended. I sat in the parking lot of the police station, rain beginning to spatter against my windshield, and understood that I was about to step into something dangerous. But I also understood that Dr. Vance had made a mistake by contacting me. She had shown her hand, revealed she was worried about what I might discover. I had 45 minutes before the meeting. I spent it driving through Kansas City's business district, searching for the address I'd found online. Ashworth Pharmaceuticals. The building was modern steel and glass, impressive in its corporate anonymity. In the lobby, a directory listed L. Ashworth on the top floor. I took a photo of the building, the directory, everything. In the parking garage, secure, requiring a key card, I spotted a black Mercedes sedan. Same model I'd seen last night. I took a photo of that too. Then I drove to the Riverside Cafe and arrived 15 minutes early. I chose a table near the back where I could see the entrance and pulled out my phone, setting it to record audio in my pocket. If Dr. Vance was going to confess to anything, I wanted proof. She arrived at exactly 4 o'clock, elegant in a cream-colored suit. She spotted me and smiled, walking over with the confidence of someone who believed they controlled the situation. "Mrs. Foster, thank you for coming." She sat across from me, ordering tea from the hovering waitress before turning her full attention to me. "You look well, considering everything." "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said. "You told me Joan had twins, one stillborn, one alive. But I saw someone in the hospital parking garage last night. Someone who looked exactly like Michael." I watched her face carefully. She didn't flinch, didn't show surprise. She had expected this. "I see," she said quietly. "And that's why you've been requesting medical records, asking questions. Who is he? The young man who looks like my grandson?" Dr. Vance folded her hands on the table. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us, for everyone's protection. I'm not promising anything until I hear the truth." She studied me for a long moment. "Joan did have twins. You were right about that. But the situation was complicated." "Complicated how?" "One of the babies had severe genetic markers. Markers that indicated he wouldn't survive more than a few days, maybe weeks. The kinder thing seemed to be, you told me he was stillborn." "He was listed as stillborn," Dr. Vance corrected. "But in reality, he was placed in a specialized medical trial, experimental treatments that had shown promise but weren't approved for general use. The family funding the research needed an infant subject. I facilitated the arrangement. My hands clenched in my lap. You gave away my grandson. I gave a dying infant a chance at survival. And in return, the family agreed to support Michael's care financially. All those years, every medical bill, every specialist. Do you think your modest savings covered it?" The family paid. "Leonard Ashworth." Her eyes narrowed. "You've been busy. Not busy enough. Tell me the rest." Dr. Vance's expression hardened. "The experimental treatment worked. Against all odds, the second twin survived. Thrived, in fact. But legally, he was dead. The paperwork was already filed. And the Ashworth family had grown attached. They had no children of their own. So you let them keep my grandson. You let me believe I'd buried him. I let you focus on raising one healthy child instead of watching another die. I made the best choice I could with the information I had. And Joan? Did you make the best choice for her too?" Dr. Vance's face went pale. "What are you implying?" "I'm asking if my daughter really died from hemorrhaging, or if she died because she figured out what you'd done, because she would never have let you take her baby." The cafe seemed to go quiet around us. Dr. Vance's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her tea. "Joan's death was a tragedy," she said carefully. "Nothing more. Show me her complete medical records. Everything from that night? I don't have access to records from 23 years ago. You accessed them 3 weeks ago, the day of Michael's accident." Dr. Vance set down her cup. "Mrs. Foster, I understand you're upset, but you need to understand the position you're in. The Ashworth family has considerable resources. If you pursue this, if you make waves, there will be consequences. Is that a threat? It's reality. Your grandson, the one you raised, is in a coma. He needs care, expensive care. Who do you think is paying for that ICU room? Not your Medicare." Ice flooded my veins. "The Ashworths. They've taken care of their responsibilities. Both boys. But if you create problems, if you try to claim the second twin, if you go public with any of this, they'll pull Michael's funding. Let him die." Dr. Vance didn't deny it. "Go home, Mrs. Foster. Be grateful for the grandson you have. Pray he recovers. And forget what you saw in that parking garage." She stood, leaving money for the tea. "I tried to do this kindly. Don't make me regret that choice." She walked out, leaving me shaking at the table. I sat for 5 minutes, then checked my phone. The recording had worked. Every word captured. But I also had 3 urgent texts from Ralph. "Where are you? We're at your house. Your door is unlocked. Mom, we're worried. Call immediately." My stomach dropped. I had locked that door. I knew I had. I drove home breaking every speed limit, arriving at 5:15 to find Ralph's Range Rover in my driveway. Through the window, I could see lights on in every room. I walked in to find Ralph and Sharon going through my desk drawers. "What are you doing?" My voice came out sharper than intended. They both jumped. Sharon's face flushed, but Ralph's expression hardened. "Mom, where were you? We've been calling for hours. I had an appointment. This is my house. You can't just break in." "We didn't break in. We used the spare key because we were worried, and I'm glad we did." Ralph held up Joan's pregnancy journal. "What is this? Why are you obsessing over things that happened 23 years ago? Give that back." "Mom, Sharon and I think it's time to have a serious conversation about your mental state." Sharon stepped forward, her voice syrupy. "We've consulted with a lawyer just to understand our options. Given your age and recent erratic behavior, we believe it might be necessary to pursue conservatorship." I finished coldly. "You want to take control of my decisions." Ralph looked pained but determined. "It's for your own good. You're not thinking clearly. This obsession with Joan, demanding medical records, apparently meeting strange people. The hospital called, concerned about harassment. I'm investigating what happened to my daughter and grandson. They died and got hurt in accidents." Ralph's voice rose. "But you can't accept that, can you? You need to create conspiracies because you can't handle real grief." The words hung between us like poison. Sharon touched Ralph's arm. "Maybe we should discuss this tomorrow when everyone's calmer." But I saw the papers on my coffee table. Legal documents, preliminary paperwork for a competency hearing. They weren't just threatening conservatorship. They had already started the process. And I realized with chilling clarity that Dr. Vance hadn't threatened me alone. She had made one phone call, to Ralph, perhaps, or the hospital, and set in motion the perfect trap. If I kept investigating, my own son would have me declared incompetent. "Get out of my house." My voice was quiet, but something in it made Ralph take a step back. Sharon's mouth opened in protest, but I cut her off. "You broke into my home. You went through my private belongings. You started legal proceedings to have me declared incompetent without even talking to me first. Get out." "Mom, we're trying to help," Ralph began. "No, you're trying to control me. There's a difference." I walked to the door and held it open. "Leave. Now." Sharon gathered the legal papers, her expression shifting from false sympathy to cold calculation. "We're not leaving those." She gestured to Joan's journal in Ralph's hand. "You clearly can't be trusted with important documents." I crossed the room in 3 strides and snatched the journal back. "This belonged to my daughter. You have no right to it." "We have every right to protect you from yourself," Sharon snapped, the honey gone from her voice entirely. "Ralph is your next of kin. These delusions about Joan's death, about secret twins. You're having a breakdown." "I saw him," I said, looking at Ralph, "in the hospital parking garage. A young man who looks exactly like Michael. He was with Dr. Vance, the obstetrician who delivered your sister's babies." Ralph's expression filled with pity. "Mom, that's impossible. Michael is in a coma upstairs. I know where Michael is. I'm talking about his twin brother, the one they told me was stillborn." Sharon laughed, a harsh sound. "Do you hear yourself? This is exactly what we're talking about. You're seeing things that aren't there, creating fantasies." "I have proof," I said quietly. That stopped them both. "What proof?" Ralph asked. I almost told them about the recording, the journal entries, the investigation, but something in Sharon's eyes made me hesitate. She looked almost eager, like she wanted me to reveal everything I knew. "Talk to Detective Morgan at the 7th Precinct," I said instead. "Ask him about Michael's accident investigation. Ask him why it was shut down." Ralph shook his head slowly. "We'll talk to him, all right. We'll tell him you're harassing police officers with paranoid theories." He moved toward the door, Sharon following. "We're filing those competency papers tomorrow, Mom. I'm sorry, but you've left us no choice." "Ralph," I said, and he paused. "When did they first contact you?" The hospital? Dr. Vance? When did someone tell you I was asking too many questions? His face gave him away. A flicker of guilt before he could mask it. This morning, he admitted. A hospital administrator called, said you were disturbing staff, demanding records, acting confused. They were concerned for your welfare. And you believed them without even asking me what was happening. Because this is crazy, Mom. Secret twins, conspiracy theories, thinking Michael's accident wasn't an accident. He stopped, running a hand through his hair. I can't watch you fall apart like this. They left. I locked the door behind them and stood in my violated home, shaking with rage and fear. I had 24 hours, maybe less, before Ralph filed those papers. Once a competency hearing started, everything I'd found would be dismissed as the ravings of a senile woman. They'd appoint Ralph as my conservator, and Sharon would have me in a care facility before I could say another word. And Michael, both Michaels, would disappear into whatever arrangement Dr. Vance and the Ashworths had made. I couldn't let that happen. I pulled out my phone and called Detective Morgan's personal number. Morgan, he answered after 3 rings. It's Nancy Foster. I met with Dr. Vance. I have her on tape admitting she faked the death of my grandson's twin and gave him to a wealthy family. She also threatened me. Said the family paying for Michael's ICU care would stop if I kept investigating. Silence on the other end. Then, where are you now? Home. But my son is filing competency papers tomorrow. Once he does that, they'll bury everything, Morgan finished, and use the legal proceedings to discredit anything you've found. It's a smart play. Can you help me? A long pause. Mrs. Foster, what you're describing involves child trafficking, medical fraud, possibly murder. These are serious crimes. But the recording alone won't be enough. We'd need medical records, proof the second twin is alive, documentation of the payments. The hospital archives are pulling Joan's delivery records tomorrow afternoon. Don't go alone, Morgan said sharply. If someone's watching you, and they clearly are, they'll stop you from getting those files. Give me the time and place, and I'll meet you there. 2 o'clock. St. Catherine's, basement archives. I'll be there. Mrs. Foster, watch your back tonight. If the Ashworths realize you're not backing down, they might escalate. The call ended. I stood in my living room, suddenly aware of how dark it had gotten outside, how isolated the farmhouse was, 3 miles from the nearest neighbor. I checked every door, every window. Then I went to George's old gun cabinet in the basement. It was locked. I hadn't opened it since his death, didn't even know where the key was. George had been the one who understood weapons, who went hunting with Ralph every fall. I had always hated guns. But standing there in the dim basement, I understood Morgan's warning. People who could influence police investigations and hospital administrators, who could steal a baby and hide it for 23 years, who could arrange an accident that put Michael in a coma. These people wouldn't hesitate to silence one old woman asking inconvenient questions. I found the key finally, taped under the gun cabinet itself where George had always kept it. Inside, his hunting rifle, a shotgun, a pistol he'd bought for home protection after a rash of rural break-ins. I looked at them and remembered what Morgan had said. I wasn't a cop. I wasn't equipped for confrontation. My weapon was information, intelligence, persistence. I locked the cabinet and went back upstairs. Instead of weapons, I gathered documents. I made copies of everything. Joan's journal, the death certificates, my notes, the photos from the parking garage. I put one set in an envelope addressed to Detective Morgan and another addressed to a lawyer I'd never met, but whose advertisement I'd seen. Estate planning and elder rights. I drove to town and left both envelopes in the 24-hour postal drop box. If something happened to me, someone would know what I'd found. Back home, I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every sound made me jump. Branches against the window, the house settling, the distant howl of a coyote. Around midnight, I got up and made tea, sitting at my kitchen table in the dark. Joan had sat here, 6 months pregnant, writing in that journal about Dr. Vance's strange behavior. Had she suspected something? Had she confronted the doctor? Had that confrontation led to her death? I pulled up the journal entry again, reading by the dim light of my phone. March 1st, 2002. I keep feeling like someone's watching me. Probably just pregnancy paranoia. But twice this week I've seen the same black car parked outside my apartment. A black car. Like the black Mercedes I'd seen with the twin and Dr. Vance. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Last warning. My blood ran cold. I immediately called Morgan's number. I just got a threat, I told him. Text from an unknown number. Forward it to me. Don't respond, don't delete it. This is good news, actually. How is a threat good news? Because they're scared. They wouldn't threaten you unless they thought you were close to something they can't afford to have exposed. He paused. Are you safe there tonight? I don't know. Pack a bag. Go to a motel, pay cash. Don't tell anyone where you are. If I run, they'll use it against me. Ralph will say I'm confused, wandering. If you stay and something happens, you won't be around to defend yourself at all. He was right. I packed quickly. Clothes, documents, my phone charger. I was heading to my car when headlights swept across my driveway. I ducked back inside, heart hammering. A car was pulling up. In the darkness, I couldn't see the make or model. The engine cut off. A car door opened and closed. Footsteps on my porch. A knock. Then a voice. Mrs. Foster? It's Leonard Ashworth. I think we need to talk. I stood frozen in my dark kitchen. Leonard Ashworth, the pharmaceutical magnate. Dr. Vance's companion in that fundraiser photo. The man who, presumably, had raised my grandson's twin as his own. Another knock. I know you're in there. Your car is in the driveway. Please, I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to offer you the truth. Against every instinct, I turned on the porch light and opened the door, keeping the security chain engaged. Leonard Ashworth was in his mid-60s, distinguished in an expensive suit despite the late hour. He looked tired, worried. Nothing like the threatening villain I had imagined. May I come in? He asked. Say what you came to say from there. He nodded, as if expecting this. Dr. Vance told me about your meeting today, about the threats she made. I want you to know those threats didn't come from me. But the boy did. The twin you've been raising. His face crumpled. His name is Ethan. And yes, I've raised him for 23 years. But not the way you think. You stole my grandson. No. He met my eyes. Your daughter gave him to me. Knowingly. Willingly. Because she knew I could save his life when no one else could. The words hit me like a physical blow. You're lying. Joan would never... She did. Because Ethan was born with a genetic condition that would have killed him within weeks without experimental treatment that wasn't FDA approved. Treatment I was developing at my pharmaceutical company. She signed papers, Mrs. Foster. Legal papers giving me medical custody in exchange for Ethan's care. Then why was I told he was stillborn? Why the lies? Ashworth's expression darkened. Because Dr. Vance insisted. She said it would be cleaner, simpler, that you were already dealing with Joan's difficult pregnancy and didn't need the burden of a dying infant. I went along with it because I was desperate for subjects for my research, and Ethan was dying. Joan would have told me. She was going to. That's what her last journal entry says. He pulled out a piece of paper, a photocopy. March 14th, 2002. The day before she died. Tomorrow I'm going to tell Mom about Ethan, about the choice I made. I'm terrified she'll hate me, but she deserves the truth. I stared at the entry. I had never seen it. It hadn't been in the journal I found. Where did you get this? Joan gave me the original pages. She tore them out before giving the journal to Dr. Vance to store with her hospital records. She wanted proof of our agreement in case anything happened to her. And something did happen to her. Ashworth's hands trembled slightly. I don't know what happened that night in the delivery room. I wasn't there. Dr. Vance handled everything. But when she called to tell me Joan had died during delivery and Ethan had survived, I had questions, suspicions. But you kept the baby anyway. I kept Ethan because the treatment was working, because I had already grown to love him, and because legally, he was dead. There was no way to undo what had been done without destroying multiple lives. He stepped closer to the door. Mrs. Foster, I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to propose something. What? Meet Ethan. Tomorrow. Let me show you the son your daughter chose to give me. Read the documents she signed. And then, if you still want to pursue this, if you still think I stole him, I won't stop you. Why would you take that risk? Because Ethan deserves to know his family. And because your grandson Michael didn't have an accident. His voice dropped. He was run down deliberately by someone trying to stop him from finding the truth. Someone who has much more to lose than I do if this story comes out. My mouth went dry. Who? Meet me tomorrow at noon. Ashworth Pharmaceuticals, top floor. I'll show you everything. The documents, the medical records, the truth about what really happened 23 years ago, and about who's trying to silence you now. He turned and walked back to his car, leaving me standing in my doorway with more questions than answers. I watched his taillights disappear down my long driveway, then locked the door and leaned against it, shaking. If Ashworth was telling the truth, then Joan had knowingly given up one twin to save his life, had planned to tell me the day before she died, had died before she could. But if Joan's death wasn't an accident, if someone had killed her to keep the secret, then that someone was still out there, still dangerous, still willing to kill to protect whatever they were hiding. And I had just agreed to walk into the office of the man who might be part of it. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table until dawn, Joan's journal open in front of me, reading and rereading every entry, looking for what I'd missed, looking for the truth hidden between her hopeful words about motherhood and her fear about Dr. Vance's strange behavior. At 5 a.m, I called Detective Morgan. Leonard Ashworth came to my house last night, I said without preamble. He claims Joan signed papers giving him custody of the twin, says she did it to save the baby's life with experimental treatment. Morgan was quiet for a moment. Do you believe him? I don't know what to believe anymore. He wants me to meet him at his office at noon. Says he'll show me everything. Documents, medical records, the truth about who ran down Michael. Don't go alone. I wasn't planning to. Will you come with me? I can't officially. If Ashworth's story is true, there might not be a crime. And if he's lying, walking in there with a cop will just make him lawyer up. Morgan paused. But I can be nearby. In the building, maybe. Close enough to help if things go wrong. Things are already wrong, Detective. Then let's make them right. But Mrs. Foster, be ready for answers you might not want to hear. After we hung up, I showered and dressed carefully. My best navy suit, the one I'd worn to George's funeral. Armor for whatever battle was coming. At 8 o'clock, Ralph called. I let it go to voicemail. His message was curt. Mom, the lawyer wants to meet this afternoon at 3. We're moving forward with the competency hearing. I'm sorry, but you've left us no choice. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. 3 o'clock. The same time I was supposed to pick up Joan's medical records from the hospital archives. The timing wasn't coincidental. Someone had made sure Ralph would file those papers exactly when I'd be most vulnerable, most distracted. I called Paula Green at the hospital archives. Mrs. Foster, she answered, sounding stressed. I was just about to call you. There's been a problem with your records request. My stomach clenched. What kind of problem? The files were pulled this morning as requested, but when I went to retrieve them from the secure room, they were gone. Someone accessed the archives overnight. The security footage shows. She hesitated. It shows someone in scrubs with the proper access codes. But we can't identify who because they kept their face away from the cameras. They knew exactly where the blind spots were. They destroyed the records. I don't know. They might have just taken them. Either way, I'm so sorry. This has never happened before. I've reported it to administration. Don't. The word came out sharper than intended. Don't report it yet. Please, give me 24 hours. Mrs. Foster, I could lose my job. Someone is trying to cover up what happened to my daughter. If you report this now, it'll get buried in bureaucracy and internal investigations, and I'll never find the truth. 24 hours. That's all I'm asking. Paula was quiet for a long moment. My mother died in this hospital, she said finally. There were questions about her care that nobody would answer. I understand what it's like to be dismissed, to be told you're overreacting. Another pause. 24 hours. After that, I have to file a report. Thank you. I hung up and stared at my phone. The medical records were gone. My son was filing competency papers in 7 hours. and I was about to walk into the office of a man who might be responsible for all of it. But I also had Joan's journal, Dr. Vance's recorded confession, and my own stubborn refusal to be silenced. At 11:30, I drove to Ashworth Pharmaceuticals. Detective Morgan called as I was parking. "I'm in the lobby coffee shop," he said. "Second floor. I can see the elevator bank from here. You get in trouble, you call me immediately. Don't try to be a hero. I'm 67 years old, Detective. Heroism isn't on my agenda. Answers are." I took the elevator to the top floor, my heart pounding with each ascending number. The doors opened to a reception area of glass and chrome, expensively understated. A young woman at the desk smiled professionally. "Mrs. Foster? Mr. Ashworth is expecting you. This way, please." She led me down a corridor lined with abstract art and into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Kansas City. Leonard Ashworth stood as I entered, but he wasn't alone. Sitting in one of the leather chairs was the young man from the parking garage, Michael's twin, Ethan. Up close, the resemblance was even more startling. The same dark eyes, the same shape of his face. But where Michael had always carried a softness, a gentleness, this young man had edges, a hardness that came from growing up in a different world. "Mrs. Foster," Ashworth said quietly, "this is Ethan, your grandson." Ethan stood, studying me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "So you're the grandmother who's been causing all the trouble?" His voice was cold. Nothing like Michael's warm laugh, his easy kindness. "I'm the grandmother who was told you were dead," I replied. "Forgive me for being upset about the lie." "Ethan," Ashworth said, a warning in his tone. "We discussed this. Right. We're supposed to play nice, show her the documents, convince her to go away quietly." Ethan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Except she's not going to go away, is she? She's going to keep digging until she destroys everything." "Ethan, no, Leonard. Let's be honest." He turned fully to me. "You want to know the truth about your daughter? Fine. Here it is. She was going to back out of the agreement. She signed papers giving Leonard custody of me, yes. But then she decided she wanted both babies, wanted to take me back, sue for custody, expose the experimental treatment that was keeping me alive. She was going to destroy Leonard's research, his company, everything, because she couldn't handle her own choice. The words hit like blows. That's not true. Joan would never. Joan was 23 years old, single, scared, and about to be a mother of twins. One healthy, one dying. Leonard offered her a way out. A way to save one baby's life and only have to raise one child. She took it. Then she got cold feet. Ethan's expression was hard. So Dr. Vance made sure the agreement stood. The room went silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. "What are you saying?" My voice came out as a whisper. Ashworth had gone pale. "Ethan, stop. This isn't—" "She deserves the truth," Ethan snapped. "Dr. Vance told me everything before she got scared and tried to make peace with you. Joan died because she was going to expose everything. Vance gave her something during labor, something that caused the hemorrhaging, made it look natural. And then she called it a tragedy and no one questioned it because women die in childbirth sometimes, don't they?" I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "Dr. Vance murdered my daughter. Dr. Vance protected Leonard's research and my life," Ethan corrected. "If Joan had exposed the experimental treatment before it was approved, I would have died. Hundreds of other children who've been saved by that treatment since then would have died. She chose to martyr herself instead of understanding what was at stake." "She didn't choose to die!" The words exploded from me. "She was murdered! She was 23 years old with her whole life ahead of her. She was going to destroy mine." Ethan stepped closer, and I saw something frightening in his eyes. "So Vance protected me, protected Leonard, and I'm not apologizing for being alive." Ashworth moved between us. "Mrs. Foster, I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know what Vance had done until years later. By then, Joan was gone. You'd raised Michael. Ethan was thriving. I thought the kindest thing was to let the lie stand." "The kindest thing?" I stared at him. "You knew a woman was murdered and you said nothing?" "I had no proof, just Vance's drunken confession one night, which she immediately recanted. I couldn't expose her without exposing everything. The illegal adoption, the experimental treatment, all of it. It would have destroyed Ethan's life for nothing. Joan was already gone. So, you buried it. Just like you're trying to bury this now. I'm not trying to bury anything, Ashworth said desperately. I'm trying to give you answers. The truth you've been searching for. Then tell me about Michael's accident. You said it wasn't an accident. Who tried to kill my grandson? Ashworth and Ethan exchanged a glance. We don't know for certain, Ashworth said. But we suspect… Dr. Vance, Ethan interrupted. She's been panicking ever since Michael started asking questions about his birth. Apparently, he'd been doing one of those DNA ancestry tests and got some weird results. Started researching, making phone calls. Got too close to the truth. My legs nearly gave out. Michael knew. He knew about you. He suspected something. Vance found out he was digging into hospital records, asking about his birth. She must have decided he was too dangerous, just like his mother had been. And you did nothing to stop her? We didn't know. Ashworth's voice rose. Not until after the accident. By then, Michael was in a coma and Vance had disappeared. We've been trying to find her, to get proof of what she did, while letting me think I was going crazy. I finished coldly. While my son files competency papers to have me declared mentally unfit. Was that part of your plan too? That was Vance, Ethan said. She called your son, told him you were having delusions. Set up the competency hearing to discredit anything you might say. Classic move. I looked at this young man, my grandson, Joan's son, and felt no connection. No love. Just revulsion. Where is Dr. Vance now? I asked. We don't know, Ashworth admitted. She's been in hiding since your meeting with her yesterday. We think she realized you weren't going to back down, that the truth was going to come out eventually. She's probably planning to run. Or planning to silence me permanently like she did Joan. The words hung in the air. My phone rang. Detective Morgan. I answered on speaker. Mrs. Foster, get out of that building. Now. I just got a hit on the APB I put out for Dr. Vance. Her car is in the Ashworth Pharmaceuticals parking garage. She's here. Ashworth's face went white. That's impossible. Security would have flagged. She has access codes, I said, remembering Paula's words about the archives break-in. She knows how to avoid cameras. An alarm began blaring through the building. The emergency fire system. Ethan pulled out his phone, checking something. Smoke detected on the 18th floor. That's the records room, where Leonard keeps all the confidential files. She's destroying evidence, I said. Or, Morgan's voice came through my phone, grim and urgent. She's creating a distraction. The office door burst open. Dr. Marlene Vance stood there, and in her hand was a gun. She looked nothing like the elegant woman from yesterday. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes wild. She looked like what she was, a woman with nothing left to lose. I told you to let it go, she said, her voice shaking. I tried to warn you, but you just couldn't leave it alone. Dr. Vance, Ashworth said carefully. Put the gun down. We can work this out. Work it out? She laughed, a broken sound. I've spent 23 years protecting you, protecting Ethan, protecting this secret. I murdered for you, Leonard. And now she's going to destroy everything. You murdered my daughter, I said, my voice steady despite my terror. You took her life because she loved her child too much to give him away. I saved a life. Vance's hand trembled on the gun. Ethan would have died without Leonard's treatment. Joan was going to condemn him to death because of her maternal instincts. I made the hard choice. You made a murder. I made a sacrifice. And I've lived with it every day since. Tears ran down Vance's face. Do you think it was easy? Watching you raise Michael? Seeing you at the hospital? Knowing what I'd done? But I did it because it was necessary. Because some lives matter more than others. No life matters more than my daughter's did, I said. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. Vance's expression hardened. No, you're not. She raised the gun, pointing it directly at my chest. And that's when Ethan moved. He stepped in front of me, his body blocking mine. Marlene, don't. She's family. Family. Vance's voice broke. I'm your family. I'm the one who kept you alive, who covered up the truth, who protected you all these years. By killing my mother, Ethan said quietly. By trying to kill my brother. In that moment, I saw something shift in Ethan's eyes, something soften, and I understood that despite his cold exterior, despite growing up in Leonard Ashworth's world of money and secrets, part of him was still that baby Joan had carried, still connected to the family he'd been stolen from. Get behind the desk, Ethan told me. Now. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet shattered the window behind me, safety glass exploding into 1,000 crystalline fragments. I dropped to the floor, my ears ringing, as Ethan tackled Dr. Vance. The gun skittered across the polished marble, spinning toward Leonard Ashworth's desk. "Security!" Ashworth was shouting into his phone. "Top floor now! Active shooter!" Another shot. This one went into the ceiling, raining down acoustic tile and dust. I could hear Morgan's voice through my phone, still on the floor where I'd dropped it. "Mrs. Foster! Nancy! Answer me!" Dr. Vance was screaming, thrashing beneath Ethan's weight. "You don't understand. None of you understand what I sacrificed." The office door burst open. Security guards poured in, followed seconds later by Detective Morgan, his weapon drawn. "Police! Nobody move!" But it was already over. Ethan had Vance pinned, her arms wrenched behind her back. She was sobbing now, all the fight gone out of her. Morgan holstered his weapon and moved to help me up. "Are you hurt?" "No." I was shaking but whole. "I'm not hurt." He pulled out handcuffs, moving toward Vance. "Dr. Marlene Vance, you're under arrest for attempted murder, assault with a deadly weapon." He looked at me. "And we'll be investigating you for the murder of Joan Foster in 2002. Vance's head snapped up. "You can't prove that. It was 23 years ago." "There's no evidence. There's a confession," I said quietly. "On tape. From our meeting yesterday, where you admitted to facilitating an illegal adoption and threatened me if I continued investigating. That's not a murder confession." "No," I agreed. "But it's enough to reopen Joan's case, to exhume her body if necessary, to test for the drugs you gave her during labor." I stepped closer, looking down at this woman who had destroyed my daughter. "Medical technology has advanced considerably in 23 years, doctor. I'm sure forensic pathologists can find traces of whatever you used, especially now that they know to look." The color drained from Vance's face. Morgan hauled her to her feet. "You have the right to remain silent." As he read her rights, more police flooded into the office. Crime scene technicians, uniformed officers. The alarm was still blaring, and somewhere on the 18th floor, sprinklers had activated. I could hear water rushing through the building's pipes. Through it all, I stood in that destroyed office and felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just an enormous, crushing weight of grief for everything that had been stolen from my family. Ethan approached slowly, his expensive suit torn and dusty. "You saved my life," I said. "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Joan didn't give me away because she didn't love me. She gave me away because she loved me enough to let me live, even if it meant losing me." His eyes were red, and I've been telling myself for years that her trying to take me back was selfishness. But it wasn't. She loved us both. She wanted us both. And she died for it. "Yes," I said simply. "She did. I'm sorry." The words came out broken. "I'm sorry for what Vance did, for what Leonard enabled by his silence, for the way I spoke to you earlier. You deserved better. Joan deserved better. I studied this stranger who wore my grandson's face. What happens now?" "Now?" Ethan looked around at the chaos, the police, the shattered remains of the life he'd known. "I testify against Vance. I tell the truth about everything, and I let the consequences fall where they may." Leonard Ashworth had been standing silently against the far wall. Now he spoke, his voice hoarse. "This will destroy the company. The experimental treatment, the illegal adoption. It'll all come out." "Good," I said coldly. "It should. But the treatment works," Ashworth pleaded. "It saved hundreds of children since Ethan. If this goes public, if there's a scandal, then maybe you should have thought of that before you built your empire on murder and lies." I turned to Detective Morgan. I want to press charges against Dr. Vance for Jones' murder, for the hit-and-run attempt on Michael's life, and against Mr. Ashworth for conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Morgan nodded. We'll need your full statement, all your evidence. This is going to be a long investigation. I have time, I said. I have all the time in the world now. 3 hours later, I sat in an interview room at the police station, telling my story for the third time. A stenographer typed every word while Morgan and another detective asked questions, clarifying details, building their case. When we finished, Morgan walked me out to the lobby. Your son is here, he said quietly. He's been waiting for 2 hours. We had to tell him about the shooting, about the arrests. I found Ralph slumped in a plastic chair, his face haggard. When he saw me, he stood abruptly. Mom, Godmom, they said there was a shooting, that you were there. Are you hurt? I'm fine. Fine? His voice cracked. The police said Dr. Vance tried to kill you, that there's evidence she murdered Joan, that you were right about everything. He ran a hand through his hair, and I saw tears in his eyes. I almost had you declared incompetent. You did what Sharon convinced you to do, I said. What the hospital and Dr. Vance manipulated you into doing. That's not an excuse. You're my mother. I should have listened. I should have trusted you. He sat down heavily. Sharon's already filed for divorce, by the way. Apparently, a scandal involving murder and pharmaceutical fraud isn't good for her social standing. She's taking the house and half my retirement. I should have felt sympathy. Instead, I felt a grim satisfaction. Good riddance. Ralph laughed, a broken sound. Yeah, good riddance. He looked up at me. What happens now? Now, I echoed Ethan's earlier question. Now we wait for justice, for truth, and we pray Michael wakes up. The story broke 3 days later. National news. Prominent obstetrician arrested for decades-old murder. Pharmaceutical executive implicated in illegal baby adoption. Hospital under investigation for medical fraud. My phone rang constantly. Reporters camped outside my farmhouse. But Detective Morgan had prepared me for this, coached me on what to say and what to keep silent about while the investigation continued. No comment, I told them all. Please respect my family's privacy during this difficult time. The difficult time that was actually the beginning of justice. Joan's body was exhumed. Forensic analysis found traces of oxytocin overdose, the drug Dr. Vance had used to induce catastrophic hemorrhaging that looked like a natural complication of childbirth. Combined with Vance's recorded confession and Ethan's testimony, the prosecutors were confident they could prove premeditated murder. The hit-and-run investigation was reopened. Security footage from a traffic camera 3 blocks from Michael's accident showed a car deliberately swerving to strike him. The car was registered to a shell company that traced back to Dr. Vance. More evidence, more proof. And through it all, Michael remained in his coma while I sat beside his bed and told him everything. About his twin brother, about his mother's sacrifice, about the truth I'd fought so hard to uncover. You need to wake up, I told him on the 10th day after the arrests. Ethan wants to meet you, really meet you. Not as enemies or strangers, but as brothers. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. No response, no change. Michael, please, I've lost so much. Don't make me lose you too. I was holding his hand, tears streaming down my face when his fingers twitched. Just the slightest movement, but it was there. Michael. I stood, pressing the call button. Michael, can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered. Nurses rushed in, checking monitors, adjusting equipment. And then, slowly, impossibly, Michael's eyes opened. Gran? His voice was barely a whisper, rough from disuse. What happened? I burst into tears. Everything, I said. Everything happened. But you're awake. You're back. 2 months later, on a cool autumn afternoon, I stood on my farmhouse porch and watched 2 young men approach across the field. They walked side by side, nearly identical in build and features, but different in 1,000 subtle ways. Michael, still recovering, moved carefully. His laugh came easier now, though shadows lingered in his eyes from everything he'd learned. Ethan walked with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world, but there was a softness there now, a vulnerability he'd learned to show. They were talking, their voices carrying on the wind, not arguing, not tense, just talking like brothers who were slowly learning each other's languages. Behind me, Ralph was setting up dinner on the long table I'd dragged out to the porch. He'd been different since that day at the police station. Quieter, more thoughtful, more present. He came by 3 times a week now, bringing groceries, helping with repairs, staying for meals. We'd never be what we once were. The betrayal of those competency papers had cut too deep, but we were rebuilding. Slowly, carefully. "They look good together," Ralph said, following my gaze to his nephews. "Hard to believe we almost lost both of them." "We lost 23 years, I corrected. Years they should have spent together. Years Joan should have lived. "I know." He was quiet for a moment. "The prosecutor called today. Vance's trial is set for January. They want you to testify." "Of course I'll testify." "And Ashworth took a plea deal. Obstruction of justice, conspiracy. 5 years, probably out in 3 with good behavior. 5 years. For enabling murder, for 23 years of lies. It didn't seem like enough, but the pharmaceutical company had been dissolved, its assets seized. Ashworth had lost everything that mattered to him except Ethan, and Ethan had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with the man who'd raised him on a foundation of death and deception. "Gran," Michael called out, waving. Ethan brought photos, from when he was little. "You want to see?" I descended the porch steps, my joints aching but my heart full. The boys met me halfway, and Ethan pulled out his phone, scrolling through images. There he was at 5, gap-toothed and muddy, so like Michael's childhood photos it made my chest ache. At 10, playing baseball. At graduation, proud in cap and gown. All the moments I'd missed. All the memories that should have included both boys, and Joan, and George, and all of us together. "You looked happy," I said quietly. "I was," Ethan admitted. "Leonard, whatever else he did, he loved me. Gave me everything. But it was all built on sand, you know? This house, this family." He gestured around at the farmhouse, the fields, the simple life I'd built here. "This is real. This is what I should have had." "You have it now," Michael said, slinging an arm around his brother's shoulders. "We both do." I looked at them, these 2 pieces of Joan's heart, finally reunited, and felt something shift inside me. The grief would never leave. The anger at what had been stolen would always burn. But alongside it, there was this: 2 grandsons who had found each other. A family reassembled from broken pieces. "Come on," I said. "Ralph made pot roast, your mother's recipe." We walked back to the porch together, 3 generations trying to build something true from the rubble of 23 years of lies. That night, after everyone had left and the farmhouse was quiet again, I sat in Joan's old room with her journal open on my lap. I added a new entry, in my own hand. November 15th, 2025. Today I had both your sons at my dinner table. They laughed together, shared stories, began to become brothers in truth instead of just genetics. Ethan has your stubbornness. Michael has your kindness. Both have your courage. They just had to learn to use it. I wish you were here to see them, to see how beautiful they've become, despite everything that tried to break them. Dr. Vance goes to trial in January. She'll spend the rest of her life in prison, if there's any justice in this world. But no sentence will bring you back. No verdict will give us those lost years. Still, I want you to know, I didn't let them bury the truth. I didn't let them silence your story. You died trying to keep your sons together, and I made sure your death wasn't in vain. Your boys know now. They know you loved them both. They know you died fighting for them. And they know they have a grandmother who will do the same. Rest now, my darling girl. Your babies are safe. Your truth is told. And your mother is keeping watch, as I always should have done. I love you. And I will make sure they never forget you. I closed the journal and set it on Joan's bookshelf, among her favorite novels and old yearbooks. Then I turned off the light and walked downstairs to my own room. Through the window, I could see the field stretching out under the stars. Solid ground, real earth. The land that had raised 3 generations of my family and would, God willing, raise Ethan's children and Michael's children when the time came. They had tried to bury the truth, but truth, like good farmland, was patient. It waited, it endured, and eventually, it yielded its harvest, bitter and sweet, painful and necessary. I was 67 years old. I had lost my husband and my daughter. I had spent 3 weeks thinking I would lose my grandson too. I had faced down killers and conspiracies and my own son's betrayal, but I was still standing. And I would keep standing, for as long as my grandsons needed me, for as long as Joan's truth needed protecting, for as long as it took to turn these broken pieces into something resembling a family again. In the darkness, I whispered a prayer, not to God, whose name I'd been told not to invoke, but to George, to Joan, to all the ones I'd loved and lost. I kept them safe, I said. I kept our family safe. You can rest now. And in the quiet of that farmhouse, surrounded by memories and truth and hard-won justice, I finally let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, they could. That maybe, just maybe, we all could. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.